Today we're taking a look at the MGCR from G&G. This is their first foray into the gas blowback realm of M4s. And we're going to go a little bit more in depth into what makes this interesting for some and not interesting for others. In the end, we'll also give you our general idea of why this might interest you. So first we're going to take a look at the mag. And it's actually pretty impressive. It's not very heavy at all. This weighs as much as, I compared it to a WeTech mag. It's about the same weight for a metal WeTech mag. I actually have GHK AUG mags, and they weigh about a third more to even half a bit more. Overall construction seems to be like aluminum shell, essentially. We weren't able to basically pull it apart, but there are visible screws and pins for maintenance. Fill valve we found is pretty impressive in the sense that it is proprietary, but when you fill it, it's a nice positive fill and you don't necessarily get a lot of gas leakage out of it. Selecting the magazine override was a pain. It's a very, very difficult switch to push forward or to push back. You'll need a tool or a punch to just push it forward for more leverage. But on the other hand, the effect is far more positive. I mean the amount of pushback from the bolt open device on the magazine is pretty strong compared to other magazines I've tried. So next we'll take a look at the upper receiver. So right now what we have is the upper receiver completely disassembled. You have the barrel assembly around here. You have the rail, the upper receiver core, the bolt carrier, charging handle, as well as barrel nut and adapter. So standard G&G flash hider, pretty nice mock gas piston system. It's removable. It doesn't add anything beyond an aesthetic. This is your typical G&G style SRS handguard, at least that format. The sights are nice, knight armament style. G&G holds the license for knight armament replicas, so they have pretty interesting flip-up sights. So the most important thing you guys would be interested in was most likely be the hop-up unit and barrel assembly. Unfortunately, for some, this is entirely proprietary. The way it works is we have an insert here that with a 6mm Allen key can rotate in or out. While doing that, it will push this bar, which in turn pushes this insert against the spring, and with the angle that's here, that adjusts pressure on the ball bearing, which then pushes on the bucking. Let's not lose that. So I haven't seen a system like this. I mean, there are some takeaways from WA and all that stuff, but this particular style I haven't seen anywhere. Barrel, while it sort of looks like a WeTech and a VSR10, it's proprietary also. Then we move on to the charging handle and bolt carrier. Charging handle is really heavy. This component, if I'm not mistaken, is zinc. This component is steel. Lock is very positive. The upper receiver is compatible with real charging handles. We tested that, but the angle of engagement here is so harsh that you really have to slap your charging handle for it to insert, which isn't that big of an issue, honestly. The upper receiver, as you can see, is billet style, so it has all these angles like as if it was machined out of a block. it wasn't, but it's interesting for some. The thread here is metric and can accommodate most rails. I'm not sure about the length. We haven't tested the length, so based on like the barrel, the mock chamber, and all that, you might need shims, or sometimes your rail might stick out just a bit. I'm not 100% sure. The issue there, though, is that whatever rail you're going to install has to be flush. It can't have protrusions like, let's say, a Mark 18 rail, or even centering teeth, or anti-rotation lugs. You'll have to get rid of those. So, like, if you want to put a URGI rail with the anti-rotation lugs down here, you'll have to cut those off, and those won't look nice. So this generally will be looking the way it looks most of the time. In fact, if anything, I would highly recommend you make sure whatever rail you want to install, you figure out what length of barrel you really want to sit with. Finally, the bolt carrier, ridiculously light. This weighs almost nothing. Like, this barrel weighs more. Nozzle is interesting. It has a aluminum fluted valve inside, and then Durlin gasket in the back with an O-ring in between. Pretty efficient. It's lightweight, so because of that weight, it won't. The gas efficiency is pretty decent. I think we went through 2 mags on one fill with no problems at 20 degrees. 20 degrees, sorry. So it's pretty interesting. What's cool usually is that this is sorry, this is pretty thick, so you'll unlikely break this, unlike, let's say, other brands where these break easily. But WeTech is really known for, like, G&G is really known for like parts replacement, availability, and all that stuff. This is where your bolt carrier catch interface is. You could see there's like minimal wear, but the gun hasn't been shot a lot. That's the one thing over time that might be a problem. It's a pretty harsh angle. Hopefully it stays that way over time. So next we'll take a look at the lower receiver. So now we have the lower receiver fully pulled apart. Body of the lower is the usual zinc. It's pretty heavy though. Pins are steel, as always. Here what's cool is you actually have a QD in the back, steel on a steel socket with the castle nut, which is steel as well, aluminum buffer tube. I'm not 100% sure whether this is metric or imperial, but going from the front, I'd imagine it's metric as well. The buffer itself is mil spec. We've tried other stocks on this and there hasn't been an issue, but G&G tolerances are slightly tight, so some things might be tighter than others. Buffer itself is where your recoil is really coming from. It's really heavy. You have your rubber stop at the end. This is what's going to give you your kick, because that's the lightweight bolt won't provide much of anything. It looks like every other bolt buffer I've seen in the past. I don't know if this is interchangeable with the real thing. Personally, I wouldn't try until others would. And that's the buffer itself. Grip looks pretty standard. Has a compartment that's for batteries and stuff. I think this is interchangeable with most other grips. It looks pretty much the same. Has a hole for your for the detent for the safety. Yet the safety is actually held in place by a set screw. So I don't know why they included that hole, but it's nice that they did. I would always recommend reusing the same screw that it comes with if ever you're changing the grip. I find this grip, it's meant for smaller hands, and there's this protrusion here that's a little bit uncomfortable. Safety selector looks standard-ish, apart from the fact that this is a 45-degree selector. So safe at 0, semi at 45, and then full auto at 90. This is made out of zinc, if I'm not mistaken, or aluminum. Now, the trigger pack is literally a pack like WeTech style, where you would just insert and pin. But what's cool about it is actually it does look relatively realistic, and everything is steel. So from the roller to the hammer to the sear sets at the bottom to the actual trigger, all this is steel. The only thing that's not steel is the housing itself, which is not that important, and naturally the brass ring here for the trigger point of rotation. This is what impresses me the most. It's like you'll never have to replace this. In terms of pull, there's a little bit of a take up, and the wall is like almost literally there. So there, and go. And that's it. In terms of reset, depending on how you keep your finger on the gun, reset can be relatively short. It's a lot easier whenever you have it in hand. I'll show you that a little bit later. And this is your, so we have our valve knocker, which is steel as well. Simple design, just the hammer hits this side and it knocks the valve on the other. And then the bolt catch function here, which interfaces with the bolt carrier over there, also steel. And what's cool is that the pin that where the point of rotation is for the bolt catch is retained in the body, so you'll never have that fall out. This looks really simple and easy to maintain. Hope it is. And honestly, being steel in its entirety, I don't see issues in the long term, apart from maybe this thin section here, but that interfaces with the magazine, so I don't see why that would have a problem over time. You never know. This is pretty impressive. Mag release looks like a standard everyday AEG style mag release. Nothing really special. Actually, the spring is pretty short. So in any case, it's an extended mag release with an additional lever for the lefties. I wouldn't change this. It's pretty cool right off the bat. So this was the lower. We'll put this back together and give our final thoughts. So what do I think of the MGCR? Well, frankly, this is not the kind of gun I would recommend for somebody who's had multiple M4 gas rifles in the past, whether they've gone through GHKs, WEs, KWAs, maybe KWAs. This is not for somebody who intends to build a project. For example, you want to change hop-up, bucking, you want to change barrels, you want to change lowers or in trigger packs and all that stuff. Everything here is relatively proprietary, and to boot, the biggest issue was that the monolithic, well, not monolithic, but the billet style upper prevents you from installing quite a few rail types without modification. So this is really for somebody who has never tried gas blowback rifles and they wanted their first gas rifle. And they're the type of individual who may not necessarily care what the gun looks like, they just want the overall feeling and manipulation. Because all that's there, all the manipulation, realistic, bolt catch function and all that stuff. Maybe you can change your charging handle, that's cool. And the intuitive hop-up adjustment makes it a lot easier for beginners compared to a lot of other systems. So this is a beginner gas blowback rifle that is at a somewhat reasonable price compared to its competitors. Now, the other competitors are a little bit more customizable, while this one isn't. But for some people, that might not matter. This is going to be around in the $700 region, let's say, Canadian, when everything else these days is in the 8 to 9s. So that saving there might be interesting for some people. The other situation is that for a beginner, a lot of the components internally are already of high grade. So basically, steel hammer and sears and all that stuff, valve knocker, all those things that technically on other brands like WeTech, some people would recommend changing right off the bat before even using the gun. By default, here are all steel. Even KWA's all steel builds don't necessarily have steel triggers included, which over time do wear sear surfaces. So as an overall package, I find this as a very interesting rifle for somebody who's never had a gas rifle. As an overall package, this is not for somebody who already owns several gas rifles. These should be available in the next coming 2 weeks in Canada, at least. In 3 different lengths, we will be picking the short and the medium length for Tactic Airsoft because of our indoor field. So this would be very interesting for CQB, and that's essentially it on the MGCR-556. A pretty interesting gas rifle for beginners. That's essentially a summary of the build. This was Gabriel signing out.